The process starts with character, right? It starts with story and character, and that drives everything else, because all the detail and explosions and fidelity we add on top of that is nothing if you don't believe in those characters and the story they're telling you. I think one of the first things we did when Kevin was talking to us about it was, okay, well, these are the characters we have. Who are the new people we want to introduce? The biggest of which was Atriox.
Put a lot of effort into establishing a new enemy, because you can have a great good guy, but he really needs to have an equal bad guy. A brute who can outthink you as well as outfight you physically is a very different kind of a threat, and so that's really where Atriox was born.
He was often sent on suicide missions, and he always returned, and that made him dangerous to the Covenant. So when we encounter him, he's at the crux of finding a way to amplify and strengthen that army.
From a visual standpoint, everything should look like it should hurt you or potentially kill you. We wanted to layer that on top of some of that recognizable Covenant technology. So lots of ramming spikes, lots of layered armor, things that spoke to a brute's sensibilities and aesthetic choices. And then we've also given him little trophies, little very subtle elements that kind of speak to maybe what his past has been like, you know, things that could have just been from somebody that he's dispatched in the past and decided to just keep as a trophy and make it part of his collection. But also the form from function, where armor is at serves a role. You know, he would be more protected around the core, like his chest, and he's got a larger shoulder pad because he's got an augmented gauntlet. Like, this should feel like a bipedal tank.
I wanted to have a reason for you to fear him, and the best way to do that is have Isabel tell you who he is and why we need to run.
Spartans, thank God. We have to get out of here.
When we first meet Isabel, she shows up in a way that we haven't seen AIs behave in Halo before. She's freaked out.
When we created Isabel, we wanted to make a different kind of AI. AIs are generally perfection. We wanted a flawed AI from the outset.
We wanted her to be a little bit more rough around the edges. She's logistics, so she's, you know, kind of like the tank girl. Ripley from Aliens 2 was a big influence in that.
I need her down there with me.
Isabel?
Sorry, sir. After recent battle reports, you should have figured out that there are rules around here. I intend to break one.
We had a real task set out for us in finding not only the person who will be Isabel, but what that voice is. And I think we couldn't have had a better actress for the job.
Sir, yes, sir.
With the way that we shoot mocap, it has to be the same person who we're scanning for our character model. So this person not only has to look like the character, but has to act like the character and has to sound like the character.
To get the likeness and fidelity that we really wanted, the technology demands that you essentially cast who you want to be that character. It's a creative choice, but it's also to showcase the best technology that's available out there. When it works so well, and you just get everything at once, and you really breathe life into that character.
It's almost like directing a movie, right? At the end of the day, I mean, cinematics has always been somewhat like that, but now you've actually got us in the studio directing these actors. The process has just changed so much. I really think those first cinematics of the original Halo Wars just kind of raised the bar for the industry as a whole, and that's what we're doing again.
I think it's important not to miss, you know, the point that people love these characters that we're creating, and that requires us spending time and effort making sure that they're well-rounded and real. From the first word on the page to the first design we draw, to the actors that breathe life into them, to the final lighting and animation parts that we do here. Every single piece needs to fall into place. There's a lot of people out there that expect a lot from this franchise.
That to me is the most exciting thing when you are putting a face to a brand new character. You're creating a new digital life, which is pretty awesome.
What is Halo music? And, you know, it's very thematic, character-driven moments.
I mean, there is a long legacy, and for us, we wanted to distill the essence of what those were.
There's kind of this sacred element.
The orchestra, this larger-than-life sound. And
with Halo Wars 2, we were kind of handcuffs off and gloves off. I mean, it was like, we have a chance to do something completely new. When I sat down with Brian and said, hey, you know, we want to launch a whole nother score, rebirth a whole franchise, or a part of our existing franchise, how are we going to do that? And so we thought, well, let's call Gordy. Gordy's someone I've known for years, and we've been wanting to work together forever. We were just waiting for that perfect project to show up. The Bryans and their completely unique sound with Gordy's complete mastery of the orchestra, and it was like, wow, I think this is going to be groundbreaking.
Something that I wanted to do, and we discussed this in the beginning, was approach the score very thematically. So each character having a theme and sort of a more old-fashioned traditional approach to the score, but done in a modern way.
We wanted new themes and that still kind of feels like Halo, but it also moves the story further and taking the sound, you know, into the sort of next generation of Halo music.
With Aatrox, he's a brute and this huge intimidating character. There's a darkness to a lot of the sound texture with him.
He's a tragic figure in an interesting way. There's a little bit, there's sort of a sadness and a hope.
As an audience member, you see this character and you can relate in some way and understand where he's coming from. And I think that the best villains in history always have sort of this backstory that you can relate to. And so you can understand exactly why they are the way they are.
You know, it's funny, just like we have this compelling new character with Aatrox, Isabel is just as compelling, if not maybe even more so in a different way. We wanted someone to be relatable. There was a delicate side, an emotional side, but there's a really strong side to her too.
Isabel is a hero, and we wanted to approach it that way and make sure that it was a theme that could be translated and heightened in the important moments.
But then there's also how her theme intersects with Aatrox's theme. This is true crafted orchestral writing, and this is Gordy's mastery of the orchestra coming into play.
For me, it was a great challenge to actually get in and study the sound, sort of the harmonic language of the Halo world.
I knew it was going to be cool, but until we heard it being performed by the orchestra at Fox,
suddenly it comes to life, and it's just this amazing, breathing, living thing.
When you're loading into a match, think about what you want to do in that first minute.
Already be talking to your teammates.
Don't hesitate, just get aggressive and get out there as quick as possible.
The thing you need to look out for in deck building for Blitz is be flexible.
You only have 12 very precious slots. I really try to make sure that I have everything there that does more than one thing.
For a 1v1 deck, you really need a fairly balanced deck with a few flex slots. If you're playing in teams, you have a bit more flexibility because you can choose to specialize in a slightly different way, so you can go with heavier units and more powers.
I kind of build from my Uber unit down. What do I want the biggest, baddest hurt to be?
I think all of the leaders bring something interesting to the table. They all have two different unique starting armies.
I definitely have recently been playing Shipmaster more. He starts with very fast units. He starts with Ghosts or Marauders, which are quick. He's got teleportation in his decks. He's got a lot of things that are about being all over the battlefield and kind of keeping your enemy on their back foot.
One of my favorite leaders is still Cutter. If you wait in the later game and you bring in, ODST drop, ODST assault group, turret drop, Cyclops drop, and then follow it up with close air support, you basically can put a huge army on the field in a matter of seconds.
If you're a really big fan of kind of being tricky and manipulative, then the Isabel leader would be a good one for you.
I really like the take control aspect of her units being able to kind of like hack AI or send hologram decoys.
The Kodiak, I think, is a very valuable unit. It takes a little bit of effort to deploy it and undeploy it, find good places for it. They can put down a heck of a lot of firepower in a really short amount of time.
I love aerial units. Their big strength is terrain is not really an issue. It's great for swooping in and capturing points.
Make great use of the healing units like the Engineer and the Nightingale. Those are some of the most important units in Blitz.
I definitely like to throw things like blisterbacks out there and try to kind of control areas on the ground.
Some Nightingales with some Hornets flying cover are really an interesting, powerful combination.
Skirmish, maybe one of the best things about it is that it gives you some really good training on how to reduce your build times.
It's a great way to learn the game. It's a great way to actually experiment with different strategies.
How can I get to my best point the fastest? And Skirmish is a great way to get that repetition in and practice that.
Get your economy going fast. There's loads of ways to capture resources, whether it's through points, running around the map, get your Marines out there, start picking up crates, go and see what the AI is up to. Because if you're playing Skirmish, assume it's coming with the rush. Start building turrets.